I just got back from Kenya. I spent 2 weeks there. I gave a keynote speech at the University, Catholic University of East Africa. I was there 17 years ago, and I spoke on African AIDS 17 years ago and told them that it didn't exist, which caused a lot of consternation in the hospitals and places where I was speaking. But now I got back there, and I said, how many people are worried about dying of AIDS? Well, nobody's worried about it anymore, and it turns out I was right. It was a population control campaign. The health was the new form of population control in Africa at that time.
Whoa.
And anybody who had diarrhea for 10 days was diagnosed with AIDS. Anybody who had any of the poverty-related diseases that are killing people over here, it was redefined as AIDS. If you walked across the street and got hit by a truck, they said you died of AIDS. So I went back and I said, now it's time to get up to speed on social engineering in Africa. You don't know about this. Nobody knew it then. Nobody knows it now. And the big issue now is, of course, homosexuality. Obama, who's half Kenyan, went over there and announced that they had to get up to speed with the new plan, and they couldn't discriminate against homosexuals. And at this point, the president turned to him and said, no, we have a different culture here. So the biggest obstacle to development, intellectual development, is the fact that nobody. Let's just limit it to Catholics. Catholics don't know their history because they went to places like Notre Dame and they were taught by people like the Jesuits who accepted the conventional narrative hook, line, and sinker. They were bought off by people like the Rockefellers, and Catholic education has never recovered. And you were a casualty of that, and I was a casualty of that.
Yeah, and that's why what you're saying makes so much sense, and how you've broken it down into logos. I always thought it was logos, but I'm going to go with you. You're literally writing the book on it, so I'm going to go with your pronunciation. It's the word which is God, which is order. And when you think of it that way, things just start falling into place, and it helps get through all this nonsense. Speaking of Africa, and speaking of some of these, population controllers, Bill Gates, in one of those TED Talks, kind of let it slip that vaccinations, where he's like, we have to lower the population of the world by 15% if we work really hard with vaccinations. And that was the first time I was wary of vaccinations, because it seemed like it was meant to kill people or not allow them to procreate, which I know is a constant oligarch strategy, whether it's from promoting homosexuality, transgenderism, abortion, broken homes. Is something going on with that? Like, you're the expert on that. Fill us in.
You want me to talk about vaccines? Let me write the book on it before I talk about it, okay? let me talk about what I've researched. I mean, yeah, if you want my honest opinion, yeah, medicine was weaponized during this period of time. The whole AIDS, the so-called HIV, that virus, there's no virus. They never found it. But that was part of you needed to do that to say that everyone was a threat. Everyone was at risk now. And that was necessary in order to rehabilitate homosexuality. All of these things happened around the same time. In other words, you can follow a continuum from, let's say, 65, like the big change that took place in 65, after the council, the approval of contraception, Griswold versus Connecticut, all of those changes, the breaking of the production code in Hollywood, using Holocaust porn as a way of smuggling tits onto the screen, and breaking down the production code with the pawnbroker.
Yep.
All of these things began then, but they didn't stop. They've continued to morph up to this point.
Yeah, the funny part about the AIDS thing was, I wonder if this was on purpose. The one guy to beat it was named Magic Johnson. And as a comedian, I always thought that was was that on purpose? That basically those are synonyms for wizard penis, like Magic Johnson, and he was the one guy to get around AIDS. I was like, are they joking with the fact that the guy's name is Magical Johnson? And so I don't know. Is there a goal?
The magic was that he stopped taking the medicine. That's what saved him. That's the difference between Magic Johnson and Arthur Ashe. And Arthur Ashe, nobody remembers him, but he was a famous tennis player.
Yeah, I remember Arthur Ashe.
And he tested HIV positive, and he took the cure, which was AZT at that point, which is chemotherapy, and it killed him. And Magic Johnson was smart enough to realize if this stuff is making me feel sick, it's probably not doing me any good. So he stopped taking it, and he's still alive today.
What was killing all those gay guys then? Like all the quilt, all the guys in the quilt and all that, like all the AIDS epidemic. Like what? Because a lot of people did die. What was killing?
Right. What happened is in '73, the APA struck down homosexuality, eliminated it from the DSM. And at this point, homosexual activity just started to take off. And so what you have, this was the epidemiologist Peter Duisberg. He studied curves for diseases. So something like the Black Death has a curve that goes way up and then it comes way down, which means that over a short period of time, everybody is going to die from it, died, and now we have the rest of the population and it's stabilized. That's not what happened with AIDS. Over this period of time, you had a 45-degree angle curve just rising up gradually, which is a poisoning curve. It's exactly analogous to what happened with cigarettes after World War II. All those GIs went into the army, started smoking, and as the smoking increased, the deaths increased on a gradual, like 45-degree angle. Same thing happened with homosexuality. They were engaged in practices that are unhealthy. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Okay, and the more you engage in those practices, in other words, the more venereal diseases you contract in the bathhouses of San Francisco, the more you take antibiotics, and the more you take antibiotics, the more you compromise your immune system, until finally your immune system collapses and you die. That's what that was. It was called a gay-related disease, gay-related immune deficiency. But the social engineers in '84 had to change that by creating this fictitious virus, HIV, to put the whole population at risk. And then African AIDS came and rescued that because they were saying, well, as many women are dying in Africa as men, so it's clearly not a homosexual disease. That wasn't true.
Yeah, no, that happens with evolution and all kinds of stuff. It's the amount of patching of holes to a flawed theory just ends up getting just psychotic, where it's like, now we've proven that everyone in Africa is just doing all this gay raping of women, and you're like, or it's something else. So Michel Foucault, for example, he just died, like you've said in the past, he died in the bathhouses of San Francisco of AIDS, but is AIDS more of a metaphor of the lifestyle?
Yeah, he died doing what he loved.
Sodomy and lying.